in Fort Mill.
Okay, what grade and classes?
I teach self-contained special ed, so 9 through 12.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, we have a lot to talk about then. I appreciate my
all right, so if you wanted to,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you wanted to start with your introduction and kind of just explain your platform.
Okay, we'll do. There's a little bit of delay, so I will go ahead and get started. So my name is Kristen Blanchard, and I am running for the South Carolina State Senate seat in District 16, which covers the portion of York County, as well as the majority of Lancaster County. I believe we are all called to use our time, talents, and treasures to serve others. There's a purpose and plan to what we have, and I've served in a variety of capacities. I've served at my church. I've served in a lot of nonprofits. I've served in where I work for my company. And basically at this point in my life, I want to serve as a public representative for the people of this district. And really that's what it is. It's a public servant. We are not to serve ourselves. We're to serve the people in the district. And that's something that's really important to me. I've been working for a company called Nutramax Laboratories for 23 years. We are located in Lancaster. We moved here about 10 years ago. We are a manufacturing company that also does research, development, marketing, and sales of nutritional supplements for dogs, cats, horses, and people. We started as a small business. The business started back almost 30 years ago with the owner and 2 people. When I came on, there was about 30 employees. Small business, we did it all. And then as time went on, we have grown to about 600 employees. We employ about 500 of those right in Lancaster, from people all over the Tri-County area and North Carolina as well. We have jobs from a variety of positions. It's not just manufacturing because our corporate headquarters are there as well. So you want to know a little bit about my platform?
Yeah, whatever you want to share.
Okay, sure. So I think first of all, it is really important right now. There are core responsibilities of government, and our area has incredible growth. So anytime you talk about that, roads, education, public safety, I mean, everybody's talking about the same thing. My difference is how I approach things, because one, on the roads are important, and we have limited amount of money for our roads. And there's a lot of competing interests as it relates to our roads. But anywhere we get, where we get to, whether it's bad roads, new roads, traffic, that's a big issue. So that's one part of my platform. I did serve on the South Carolina Department of Transportation Commission for 2 years. I recently resigned so I could run for the seat because of what I learned under that, with that experience, is something that I think can be very valuable to the district, and making sure that I get results for the people as it relates to roads. Education is another area that is very near and dear to my heart. I feel that we really need to refocus on the children. There's so much things that we need to find ways that we can get money into the classrooms, to the teachers, and to have our children reach their full potential. So I'm very passionate about that. And whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's programs that we've supported within the public school system, on character education, whether it's just engaging in the system, so kids can get access to what is available out there, and what's their passion, where do they want to be when they grow up. Of course, some of us are still trying to figure that out. But that is definitely a passion for mine. And when you mentioned special ed, I do have a personal story as it relates to that, with some things I struggle with my daughter, and it will pull right into some of the things we're going to talk about with education, because I know that's passionate to you. Public safety is also important. We need to make sure that we all live in a safe environment. And so our endorsement of the Lancaster County Sheriff, as well as the Solicitor Randy Newman, is very important to me. And that's something that we need to take care of, those people that have putting their lives on the line 24/7 to protect and serve us, because that's what they do. So I definitely have a passion that relates to that. So there's a lot of other things, but that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. I've got a couple education questions I'm going to ask you. The first one is, what is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today?
Well, I'm a type of person that when I look at something, I go deep, and I analyze it, and I look at different resources, and I'll just sit there and use the talking points. I've had a lot of Zoom conversations with teachers. I've talked to administrators. I've talked to teachers both in the Fort Mill School District and Lancaster School Districts. Now, when we look at South Carolina, we're very strong in this area comparatively to some of the school districts across the state. What I see is that we continually try to fix education, and we continually try to put money into areas that it's really not getting into the classroom. It's not producing meaningful results. We're still lagging behind in the nation. And I think a lot of it has to do with is because we aren't focusing on resolving the real problems. And so I think we need to do better. And I think we need to stop doing the same things over and over again and start really trying to solve the root cause of the problems. And who best to talk to but the teachers, the parents, the people that are on the front lines to understand what is really going on here and what do we need to do to improve things, and not just the same old things over and over again. I don't know how far you want me to go with that.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next question is, if elected, what would be the first step you would take to improve public education?
So the thing I hear over and over and over again is, we all know about testing, and I have personal experiences with testing, but I hear again and again, class size, especially in elementary education. I mean, when you say it's acceptable to have 30 kids to one teacher in second grade, oh my gosh, I would go out of my mind. I mean, it's teachers are special because I can't imagine. I mean, it's hard enough with my own children, but to have that and have kids that are all unique and different, that's just, it's you cannot really teach children, in my opinion. The class sizes have to be addressed. The standards I hear over and over again, it's just, oh my gosh, we got to get through all these standards. There's so many standards, you don't have time to truly get in and teach the kids. And again, I probably will be talking and focusing more on the foundational elementary school, because I think that's where it sets the tone for the rest of the time. I also hear that some of the standards that they do set up are not biologically age appropriate. I think we have to look at that. I think you're in special education. I will tell you that is something that needs to be addressed so much better than they're doing now. I was in with a teacher that were in tears, and the pressures that they have, the paperwork, the lack of support in their classrooms. When you're in a special education situation, you need that support. My husband's mother is a special ed teacher, was a special ed teacher. My husband's sister is a special ed teacher in Virginia. And you hear the stories over and over again. And again, I have a daughter that struggles. So that is an area that has been ignored. And I think that's a shame. I think we do a great job with gifted and talented, but there is a segment that is not being addressed. We need to make sure the money gets to the classroom and not all the fluff that goes in before that. It's not necessarily we need more money. We need the money going to the right place. And so that's another very big passion of mine. And I also believe we need to engage more with our communities. And what I mean by that is, we are an organization, my company, we do support both financially and just, mentoring and just being a champion behind the program Leader in Me in our elementary schools. One of the schools that we sponsor is Brooklyn Springs Elementary School, and it's a character education. Buford Elementary has had it now for 5 years. The principal in middle school is saying these kids are different, and it's totally changing the dynamic of how the kids are approaching education, how they're approaching just soft skills. Like, how do you work with other people? Which makes the job easier when they get up into middle school and high school, because they kind of set that foundation. So those are some of the programs that I want to look at. That's not always the government's going to solve it. We got to solve it locally as a group.
Okay. Next question. If elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education?
Well, it's a mess. I mean, when you look at, I saw one graphic that literally had a circle with about 20 circles around it. And you have, of course, the local funding. I'm going to see if I can pull that out. Yeah, I have it right here. So you have the local funds, and you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You have general funds. You have Act 388 that plays in it. You have education lottery, which is a whole conversation we can talk about. the Education Improvement Act, the Education Finance Act. You have the federal funds, you have local funds, you have bonds. It is so complex. And it's when you have something that's that complex, you're never going to be able to get it to work. And nobody ever wants to try to really reform the funding formula. Everybody talks about it, but we have to. We are wasting money and we're wasting time. And who is going to be affected? Our kids. And that's wrong. So I think we need to streamline it. I think we need to take part of what the Education Improvement Act and Education Finance Act and get it to where the money stops getting diverted all over the place and starts streamlining directly to the school system itself. And then I think there needs to be local control over that school system with some performance metrics. But ultimately, if you have a failing school, you address that. But you've got to allow these schools to almost run. I like to have somebody said it, and I don't want to compare it to a business because it's not. But it's almost like it's you are in control. You have the responsibility and accountability for your school. You know the kids, you know the parents, you know your culture. Not every school's the same. Not every child's the same. So we have to stop diversion of the money and get it into the classroom. And again, how you do that is going to be complicated. I'm not going to sit there and try to pretend I have the answers because, to be honest, I don't have all the answers. But we need to somehow streamline that funding and stop all the craziness of this bubbles all over the place because the money will not get to where it needs to go.
Okay. And last question I have is, in your opinion, what would a successful accountability system for education in South Carolina look like?
That is a great question. I think it goes back to, you have to look at the local schools. You got to have some metrics that are generic across the board that are set up not by the legislators who have no clue what it's like to be in a classroom. It needs to be set up by the people that are part of that are going to be held accountable. Because it's like in business. If I sat there and said, oh, hey, you over in this department, I want you to set up metrics for this employee. They have no clue how to do it. We engage our own employees to actually set up their own metrics because they know best what works and what doesn't. So I think that's really important, that you can't just have a top-down oppressive metric system that's not going to hold people accountable. Also, if everybody's accountable, everybody's responsible, nobody is. So we have to have clear roles and responsibilities among the schools, the school districts, the administrators, and the teachers. And again, if you try to do this all through the state or the federal government, it's going to fail. We have to allow autonomy at some point for those school systems to be able to make decisions on their own. There can be basic standards, basic measures, basic things you have to meet, but I really think we cannot be dictating everything down to the classroom. I think it just we fail every single time doing that.
Okay, great. Those are all my questions. Is there anything else that you want to say to, this is recorded, so it'll be shared with the public. Is there anything else that you want to share or say?
I want to go back to thinking outside the box. And as somebody who's in a manufacturing industry, and it's what we've gone through with COVID, I think it's really important that we start thinking about how can we have our children reach their fullest potential, and how can we give them exposure to what's out there. And I'll just leave you with one story because I love this story. So with all the things we do in manufacturing, we will bring school kids in. We've actually had some folks from Nation Ford come over, do job shadowing, talk to people. I've worked with a counselor over there, both at Fort Mill and Nation Ford, actually probably Fort Mill. But we need to give them exposure. So I had a chemistry class from Buford High School come over. And you could tell some of these kids were like, get me out of here. This is the boringest thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. This one kid is walking through going, okay, we're seeing the chemistry, we're seeing manufacturing. He gets out in the warehouse and he sees a forklift and his eyes light up. Now, again, this may not be for everybody, but he said, wait a second, that's a job? And I said, yes, it's a job. You have to be certified. There's a certain skill set. It's a good paying job because how important the whole supply chain is in the distribution of the warehouse. And he just was, his whole demeanor changed. He had no idea that was a job. So this is where I think having somebody that understands you've got to think outside the box and partner with your schools, I think is really important to champion that. So again, it's not a legislative thing, but it's something that's a passion of mine. And I will say too, because of my daughter struggling, she was going to completely slip through the cracks. I have definitely some personal stories which I can talk about another time, in the fact that you're in special education, because I'm sure you have some very unique issues that aren't being addressed.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. Call me if you have any questions.
Okay, great. Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.